Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 116. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday, Steelers Nation. Appreciate Josh and Ross McCorkle for holding down the fort on Friday's show. Apologize for missing that one. I may sound a little bit even worse than usual. As Dave mentioned, you guys said on the Friday show, had a nose surgery this past Thursday to fix some long-standing, relatively minor health stuff. So hopefully on the mend for that, and maybe we'll sound better on the podcast once I fully recover, but I'm sure I don't sound super great today. But wanted to jump back on, Dave, you and I to talk about what happened this weekend, some more draft stuff. So good to be back with you. And again, thanks to Josh and Ross for handling things on the Friday show.
Yeah, well, welcome back. I'm glad everything went well. That's what you have to have those kind of things when you get in the amount of fights that you got into as a as a kid. You're paying for it now for having you getting punched in the nose so often. I certainly wish you'd start talking through your or breathing through your mouth a little bit more for this.
That's what the people wanted.
No, you sound fine. I'm glad to have you back. Obviously, fortunate enough to have Ross McCorkle and Josh Carney to sit in and talk to me and listen to me ramble and get them to ramble some on the show the other day there. But welcome back, and we might make this a little bit shorter show today to take it a little bit easier on you, but I think we got some interesting things to talk about today.
We do. Pretty quiet weekend from a news standpoint overall, but some interesting draft things as we're really kind of shifting into full-time 100% draft mode with it just a couple of weeks away, the 2025 edition up in Green Bay. So let's start there, Dave. Let's kind of talk about some of the reports that came out on Sunday. It's always interesting to see who the NFL invites to the NFL draft. And while it's never a guarantee, it's a pretty good suggestion of who the NFL believes based on what they're hearing from teams and organizations of who's going to be taken pretty early. And according to, I believe it was Dane Brugler, he mentioned two names who have received and accepted invites to the draft later this month. And one is Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden. That one probably not terribly surprising. The other one, though, I think was more notable, Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe. And I think I've talked about throughout this process, what's his stock? Is he truly a first-round guy and he's gotten some buzz there? Is he going to be a day two kind of a guy? Who's going to be that third, fourth quarterback off the board? For Milroe to get the invite suggests that he's going to be at no worse a top 40 player and good odds to go on night one.
Yeah, it was interesting to read that report from Dane Brugler, and I would imagine here in the next couple of days we'll get the full list of players that have accepted invitations to the 2025 NFL Draft. I went back last night to pull up the list of that was, I think, released on April 11th. Of the 13 prospects attending the NFL draft. And I believe all of those guys went in the first round. Did they not? Terry and Arnold, Jaden Daniels, Marvin Harrison Jr., J.C. Latham, Latu, Drake May, Quinyon Mitchell, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Darius Robinson, Brian Thomas Jr., Dallas Turner, and Caleb Williams. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all those guys went in the first round there overall. I did a quick research, and I think that's what I came up with there. And I believe, once again, because of them wanting to make sure that they're not left with kind of media relations egg on their face, if you will, that the list is probably going to be somewhat similar in length this year, and it would be quite embarrassing for the player, I guess, more than anything, if you invite him and he accepts to come to the NFL draft and he's sitting there in the green room or white room or blue room or whatever they call it, to wait to hear his name called especially past day one. So maybe they know something, the league wise that quarterbacks and so be in a position of need, and some of them sometimes get overdrafted, if you will. Uh, Long story short, it feels like you know they've got a good sense that Jalen Milroe will go in the first round.
which will only fuel Steelers speculation. Could Pittsburgh be that team? Is it true that what Colin Cowherd was told a couple weeks ago when he said an NFL exec was basically convinced Pittsburgh would take Milroe, or was certainly leaning that way at number 21? We don't know. We'll have all those answers with time, obviously, but this is going to suggest he's viewed a lot more favorably around the NFL than maybe what I initially thought. Now, quarterbacks have been prone to dropping. Remember that happened with Will Levis, who was invited to the draft a couple of cycles ago and didn't go until the top of round 2. This happened with Geno Smith, and of course, everyone remembers Aaron Rodgers, his draft day fall as a potential top 3 pick who went in the 20s. So there is no guarantee, but yeah, it is certainly notable when Milroe gets the call. Now, will Jackson Dart get the call as well? If he does not, then does that mean Milroe will be the third quarterback off the board? And again, where the heck does Shedeur Sanders go? Because there's no guarantee he's going to be a top 3 pick. If he gets past the Giants at 3, you wonder where he'll end up.
And isn't there a report that both Sanders and Travis Hunter will not be attending the draft?
I hadn't seen that. I mean, I'm sure it's out there, but that I assume would not be because of a draft stock issue, at
Right.
least not for Travis Hunter. That may be just they're doing their own draft party plan thing, I'm assuming.
Right. But I mean, it is quite interesting that Milroe, got the invite and accepted. You would think on Milroe's end, I mean, that's quite an embarrassment in today's day and age, right? If you're invited to this thing and you're sitting there and you were not picked in the first round.
Sure. And so the NFL, and I think you'd even mentioned the NFL, there was a report earlier this year the NFL would be more selective with the invites it handed out and keep them to 8 to 10. I don't know if they're going to exactly truly be at that number or not, but if that's the case, if the list, once it's fully revealed, is a shorter one compared to past years, that's even stronger indication that Milroe is confidently viewed as a top 32 guy, and really probably higher than top 32. We're talking top 20 picks, the NFL, I'm sure, because you don't want those guys to wait until pick 29 and be there the whole time. I think the latest pick of last year's scoop that you rattled off was Robinson, who went 27th overall to Arizona. So these are not just first round picks, but generally viewed as high, top half of the draft first rounders.
Right. And we've done the exercise of what teams we think could potentially draft a quarterback in the first round. And for those teams that do not draft a quarterback in the first round, how many teams in per se the second round, unless they were one of the, I don't know, 4 or 5 teams that we think might draft a quarterback in the first round, would wait till the second round to their pick, to draft one there. So, I mean, I think this is significant news. I mean, obviously, because of the Steelers' need for a franchise quarterback still, and kind of their association with Milroe throughout this, loosely kind of speculated that they might be interested in taking him, and then now there's going to be a lot of discussion and speculation about if Milroe's on the board at 21, would the Steelers pull the trigger on that?
So, what is the takeaway here? Has, in your mind, Dave, have the odds of Milroe going to Pittsburgh increased with this news, or is it still too much noise to really make that strong connection?
I think there's too much noise still. Personally, I will be surprised if the Steelers take a quarterback in round 1, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't or wouldn't or I guess shouldn't, because of the state of the franchise at the position. I more view this as maybe we missed something with, maybe a team being higher on him than maybe he's the number 3 quarterback and Jackson Dart isn't. Maybe 3 quarterbacks go off the board in the first 20 picks, and maybe Milroe's the third one that gets a call.
But to who, if not
Yeah.
Pittsburgh?
I think the Saints are maybe in consideration. I'll have to pull back up the draft order Let me pull that up real quick, and I guess we can kind of go through that exercise once again. I mean, there's a lot of talk that Tennessee obviously going to take a quarterback, right?
Yeah, Cam
Cleveland.
Ward's going first. 'Cause they even canceled the workout with Shedeur Sanders. Cam Ward is going first overall.
All right, what's Cleveland going to do? Is it time for them to address the quarterback position, especially? I mean, they had a lot of that brass at the Colorado showcase showdown, I guess, or whatever they're going to call that thing
Mhm.
for them there. So I think that's plausible that Cleveland takes a quarterback. What are the Giants going to do? Las Vegas, even though they signed Geno Smith, could they potentially be in play for a quarterback? The Jets seem comfortable with Justin Fields, so I don't think they would go that route. Carolina feels pretty comfortable or seems pretty comfortable with their quarterback position. And then at number 9, you have the New Orleans Saints, who, even if they hold on to Derek Carr, the plan is to have Derek Carr for them this year. Could they potentially take a quarterback to start looking to the future at the position? But if you move past New Orleans at number 9, you got Chicago that's got a new quarterback. You got San Francisco that seems happy with Purdy. You got Dallas. You got Miami with Tua. You got Indianapolis with a recent investment at the quarterback position in the draft. You got Atlanta, obviously happy, seemingly happy. You got Arizona that's got a franchise quarterback or per se right now. Cincinnati's obviously got Joe Burrow. Seattle, uh, the Darnold contract could technically be viewed as a one year deal, but I mean, that far down in the draft, would they really go quarterback? It doesn't feel like it. Tampa Bay's got Baker. Denver's obviously invested in their quarterback at this point, and then Pittsburgh at 21.
Right, so it's really the teams at the top, the Titans, the Browns, and the Giants, 1, 2, and 3, the Saints at 9, and then Pittsburgh at 21. Now, the wild card is, the draft is always full of surprises. No one saw Atlanta taking a quarterback last year. They did it with Michael Penix. Who trades up? Could some team move up? Could the Giants or Browns get back in the round 1 towards the end of the thing and then pass on Shedeur Sanders and take a Jackson Dart or a Jalen Milroe in the 20s? That's always possible as well. But, it's certainly notable. There is, Pittsburgh's on that short list of quarterback clearly needy teams. Aaron Rodgers or not. And Milroe's going to be at the draft. So those thoughts become a whole lot easier to start connecting.
I guess where do you view Vegas in this at 6?
Well, if Sanders slips, it'll be interesting from a talent perspective. He may be hard to ignore, but I don't see them in the running for a Milroe or a Dart. I think it'll either be they're going to take Sanders because the value is too strong, or Sanders is gone, or they just don't want a quarterback and they want to go somewhere else.
So, in your view, if Milroe, if 3 quarterbacks don't go off the board, 1, 2, 3, then it's up to New Orleans. And let's assume right now, which is dangerous, but let's assume Milroe is viewed globally as by the teams that need a quarterback in the per se first round, that Milroe is now ahead of Dart. So you'd have to have 3 quarterbacks taken by 4 teams one of 3 of 4 teams, ending with New Orleans at 9. And if that doesn't happen, then at least one of those guys, Sanders or Milroe, would be on the board for the Steelers at 21, unless some team jumps back up ahead of them. But that's a long way to go up, isn't it? Back ahead of 21 for some of those teams.
It would be, but it depends how far you're going up. Are you going up to 19 or 11? It's a pretty big gap there. So it's interesting because Dart was my view. I think the NFL, some of the insiders were believing Dart was going to be the 3rd quarterback off the board, and maybe he still will be. And maybe Milroe becomes the 4th guy in a late trade up scenario where somebody comes up at 28 or 31 to take Jalen Milroe. But I guess the question is, Dave, what is the line between due diligence for Pittsburgh and serious, earnest interest? Because obviously they've done a lot of homework on Milroe at his pro day, the dinner. He was at the Senior Bowl, the combine, etc. Is that due diligence? Is that true interest at the position for the prospect? None of us can say for sure, obviously, but that always becomes the question of what is just doing your homework, having a good, thorough evaluation versus we actually are going to strongly consider this guy.
Has he been in? He hasn't been in for a visit yet, though, right, Milroe?
No, and I wouldn't
He's
expect him to
he's done
because,
everything else.
yeah, because they were at that pro day, because Tom Orth was even there. There really is no reason to bring that guy in. I mean, could he? Sure, but they brought in Tyler Shuck. They brought in Jackson Dart. He came in Friday because Tomlin, Kahn, etc. Arth were not at that pro day. And so you want to bring those guys in to get them on the whiteboard, to meet them face to face. That's what the visit really serves.
Well, if we are to believe that the NFL has done enough homework to be convinced that Jalen Milroe will go in the first round, uh, and obviously nothing's guaranteed, but if we are to believe that they think that there's a good enough chance of that happening, and with Pittsburgh being one of the few teams that really quarterback needy when it comes to the first round this year, then you have to at least, and because of them going to the pro day, and because of him being Power Five, and because of Senior Bowl, because of formal combine, all the blues clues that you look at, you have to at least open up the plausibility of Milroe being the pick at 21.
How would you feel if Milroe was the pick at 21?
Personally, my
Hmm.
feelings aside, not great, but as I have said time and time again, if you don't have a franchise quarterback, you have to explore all options of getting one. And if you have enough conviction if the team has enough conviction in him to be that pick, especially in the state of the franchise right now, where we have no idea who the next franchise quarterback will be, you have to at least accept that they're doing everything they can to solve that problem. So personally, I've had him not as a first round guy, but if the team shows enough conviction, much like they did with Kenny Pickett a few years ago, to make him the pick, you have to at least stand and salute that to some degree, I think.
Sure, I understand that standpoint, but it just comes down to whether or not you think he's worth the pick or not. And I don't think Jalen Milroe is close to a first round guy. I think there's some great physical tools with him. I think there's some great character and leadership tools with him, intangibles, but the accuracy is such a deal breaker to me. Just so scattershot, so
Right.
much work to do. It would feel like this team is chasing a quarterback and chasing a Justin Fields replica after losing out on Fields to the Jets in free agency. And I just think that would be a move that is not gonna work out in the long run.
And we've already seen what missing in the first round on a quarterback does to not only the Steelers but other teams, right? And what happens if you miss on this one? And look, there's no guarantees. Teams miss more than they hit on first round quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's a coin flip, especially, well, really at any point in the draft, early, early first round, mid first round, the success rate's really 50-50, but we'll see. It's notable, it's interesting, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'm gonna allow myself to. Where is the D line interest? For as much as that's
Yeah.
a need, and obviously it will be addressed at some point in the draft, Dave. We have still yet to see any good connections to this team drafting defensive line early. Now, could that change this week? There will be more visits this week. They have, according to our tracker, 10 open spots, and maybe all the top D linemen, Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant, Walter Norland, Alfred Collins, Tyleek Williams will come in. That's all possible. But right now, with about 3 weeks to go to the draft, less than that, we have yet to really be able to have a good, clean Blues Clues roadmap to first round defensive linemen.
You're right, and it'll hopefully we get the full list of of 30 here to wind up here over the course of this. I guess it would have to be this week, right? Or is it through next week? What did we decide?
I forget. I have to go back and check. It's this week or next week, but they have 10 spots left. So they bring in a bunch of guys this week. They're going to just run out of spots, even if they
Right.
might technically be able to bring guys up till next Wednesday or whatever the deadline would be.
All right, so we'll watch that list. Let's roll back to you weren't here on Friday, so I know you know the list of players, but your thoughts on the players brought in for pre-draft visit on Friday.
Yeah, I'll read them off here. That was Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, the quarterback. That was his final pre-draft visit across the league. By the way, that was, I think, according to Ian Rappaport. Jamari Caldwell, the other Oregon defensive lineman, the D-tackle there. Jalen Noel from Iowa State, the wide receiver. And Nick Eman-Worry, the safety from South Carolina. So Dart, Eman-Worry are looking like likely first-round selections. Noel, potential day two guy, undersized, projected slot receiver, had a big year at Iowa State in 2024. Caldwell, a true zero shade nose tackle plugger, probably third, fourth round ish kind of a guy. And so those four coming in. So Dart continue to do that homework on quarterback. Noel is a different type of playmaker, but you talk about potency, explosiveness. I watched him over the weekend. We could talk about him some more. I've talked about safety quite a bit, the interest shown in the position there. He's only, I believe, the first safety to come in for a visit, so I don't want to pretend like they brought in a bunch of those guys, but they've done a ton of homework on the pro day circuit, and now with a visit with Eman Worry and then Caldwell, that plugging nose tackle. So yeah, it's an interesting group of four there, Dave.
All right, and you've talked quite a bit about the Steelers' interest in the wide receiver position from the pro day circuit and how that generally lines up with the position coach. And I think specifically you said first 3 rounds, first 2 days of the draft. How excited were you to see Matthew Golden be brought in, and what does it mean?
Yeah, it wasn't shocking to see a potential first round guy come in. It just kind of furthers the interest in wide receiver. And, I don't know if this is the year to take that first round receiver. I don't think I'm really seeing even Golden as that true number one type of receiver to take that 21st pick on, but more quote unquote ammunition to the idea that a receiver will be taken within the top 2 days.
The last time this team took a wide receiver in the first round was Santonio Holmes, was it not?
It was only two since 2000. Burris in 2000, Kevin Colbert's first ever pick, and then trading up for Holmes in '06.
So what do you think it's possible?
Sure.
For I guess uh Golden to at least be on the board at that point, and the Steelers potentially taking him at 21 overall.
I think Pittsburgh could take him. Will he be on the board? He's another, according to Dane Brugler, draft invite. And I think it's really hard to project out where these receivers will go. Won't be as early as last year. Now, the talent isn't as good as last year's class. And so will it be Teteroa McMillan, who's been conventionally viewed as the number one receiver in this class throughout most of this process, but Golden's gotten a lot of buzz, and it's probably those two guys fighting to be the first receiver off the board. If Golden was the first receiver taken, it is a little hard to believe the first receiver will not be selected until number 21 overall, even knowing this is a down class without the quarterbacks to push down the other prospects. You would think a receiver is going to be gone by then. So I don't know if I love the odds of Golden being there, but if he's there, then certainly I could see Pittsburgh taking him.
What would this mean for in regards to potentially Pickens? Does it mean anything? Are they just saying this is the best guy on the board? We know that we're likely to lose Pickens after this season, so we're just prepping ourselves for that? Or could this be more of a sign that the team would be open to trading Pickens on draft day or draft weekend?
Yeah, I think the idea of, oh my goodness, they're going to trade Pickens or they're really entertaining offers for Pickens was maybe a little overstated by the internet at large by the news of Golden's visit. I wouldn't necessarily mean that. I think Pittsburgh will listen and there's an opportunity, but to me, that's more about planning for Pickens post 2025.
Okay. All right. Where did we want to go? I wanted to go down maybe a list of names here of guys that we think unequivocally will not be. This is dangerous exercise, but we've reached about we're a little less than 3 weeks away from the draft, and trying to pigeonhole which guys might be on the board, which guys might not be on the board come the 21st pick overall. I'm going to read off some names here, and you tell me whether or not you're convinced this player will be gone or not. We'll try to build out a list of at least 19 or 20 of them.
Okay, you're gonna read them off all at once, or are we gonna go one by one?
We'll
How do you
we'll
want to
go
do
one by one real quick.
Okay.
It won't take too long. Abdul Carter.
Yes, gone by 21.
I agree. Travis Hunter.
Yes.
I agree. Mason Graham from Michigan.
He may go a bit later than people think, but yes, gone by 21.
I think so as well too. Tyler Warren, Penn State.
I will say, I mean, this is unequivocal though, right? This is how I'm answering these questions in terms of like
Yeah,
100%. Then I don't think Warren's gonna meet that bar.
I do. Uh,
Okay.
Ashton Genty.
Even for a running back, I will say unequivocally he will be gone by 21.
I will as well too. Jalen Walker from Georgia, the edge.
Yes, gone by 21.
I agree. Cam Ward.
Yes, gone by 2, let alone 21.
Armand Mimbo, Missouri, tackle.
The offensive lineman a little harder to figure out this year, but I'll say yes, gone by 21.
I will as well too. Michael Williams, Georgia edge.
I hadn't studied the edge group as intensely as others, but based on what I have seen, yes, gone by 21.
I agree. Colston Loveland, the other tight end, top tight end in this class out of Michigan.
With the shoulder injury might complicate things a little bit. I don't know if it's going to dramatically impact draft stock. He's a little like Warren, where I can't unequivocally say he'll be gone. Just wondering where those guys will go. Likely, but I'm not going to say unequivocally.
All right, I'm with you there. I think there's a good chance he does, but I'm not going to put him unequivocally. Jade Barron, the corner out of Texas.
No, I don't want to say unequivocally.
Me either. Will Johnson, Michigan corner.
It's a little complicated coming off the injury and wondering, it's going to be at least one corner taken by 21. He's in that camp where I think he'll be gone, but I really don't think I can say unequivocally he'll be gone by 21.
Yeah, I'm going to say he's gone. O'Marion Hampton, North Carolina.
No.
I'm with you. No, there. Shadur Sanders. Will he go in the top 20 picks?
I mean, it's going to be interesting, assuming and if he gets past the top 3, but I'm going to say yes, he'll be gone in the top 20.
I will as well too. Tet McMillan, one of the top wide receivers out of Arizona.
I'll say no. I don't know how these receivers are going to go. They're not going to go super, super early. Golden could be the first guy. Again, good odds to McMillan's gone by 21, but I won't say unequivocally any receiver is going to be gone by then.
I will. I'll say he's gone. What about James Pierce, the edge out of Tennessee?
No, I think he could certainly easily be there. Some other edge guys, there's been some reported off-field concerns with Pierce. I don't know how valid those things are, but no, I won't say unequivocally that Pierce will be gone.
I'll agree with you there. Jahad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama.
I think there's been some discussion he may fall in the round 2. He's got that injury right now. Off-ball linebacker, a little less valuable. No, I will not say unequivocally.
I will agree with you. Sometimes we see those guys get pushed down at the off-ball linebacker position. How about Kevin Banks, the offensive tackle out of Texas?
Again, tackle is a little harder to try to figure out. I won't say unequivocally, though. I think that's too far with guys like Will Campbell and Membu potentially going ahead of him.
I think Banks comes off in the top 20. Unequivocally. Man, where are these tackles? Some of these tackles, it would be. I know it's not a great tackle class, but when has at least 2 tackles not gone in the first 20 picks? I know.
Well, if Campbell and Membu go, there's 2 there.
Okay. So all right. I will say probably not unequivocally with Banks. Will Campbell, There's a lot of talk about the arm length and all like that, but I mean, the tape is fantastic. He's got to come off in the first 20 picks.
Yes, whether they view him tackle or guard, irrelevant for this discussion. He's easily one of the top 20 players of this class. Will be gone before 21.
Shamar Stewart, the edge out of Texas A&M.
Yeah, those guys start getting funky. Those A&M defensive linemen. There's a bunch of them this year. I don't want to say unequivocally that he'll be gone by then.
Yeah, I don't want to say either. What about Nick Emanwari out of the safety? Many people consider the top in this class out of South Carolina.
No, I don't want to say that either. I mean, I think Stark could still be the first safety, and that could leave Emanwari on the board at 21.
Matthew Golden, wide receiver, Texas.
Same with Tedoroa McMillan. Not going to guarantee he's gone top 20.
All right, we're getting into more grayish kind of names at this point. Is there anybody else you'd like to?
Well, two quick notes here. Ian Rappaport just tweeting out Joshua Farmer, the defensive lineman from Florida State, visiting Pittsburgh today. That's been reported. I had found that whenever Farmer talked after his pro day, so that's not new news, although today's date is news. And who else will be visiting with Joshua Farmer is going to be the question. But Farmer, another 5-tech, little shorter but good length, probably mid-round, third, fourth round guy on Joshua Farmer. Got to clean up the pass rush plan, but some tools to work with.
All right.
I think one name to mention, I think will be gone in that top 20, Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama. I think is pretty much viewed as a top 15 kind of a guy.
Interesting. Okay. Let's see. What about Kenneth Grant from Michigan?
No, I wouldn't say unequivocally that he'll be gone by then.
What about Derek Harmon, Oregon?
Same, would not say unequivocally.
Okay. Is there anybody else that we need to talk about that we haven't when it comes to? I mean,
Walter Nolan, Malachi Starks. What do you think about those two?
Neither I would say unequivocally.
Okay, fair.
How we should have probably wrote these down, but we built out at least probably, I don't know, what, 13 or 14 that we thought unequivocally, which leads kind of a wide gap still between that and 21.
Yeah, I think the overall takeaway I have, Dave, is that this year's draft class is a lot murkier because you don't have the quarterbacks that you can kind of start penciling in. Okay, someone's going to take him at some point and they're going to be gone. Potentially only one quarterback will be taken by Pittsburgh's selection, probably more than that, but not the 6 we saw in the top dozen picks last year. And you just don't have the blue chip talent that you usually have at premium positions, at edge rusher, at offensive tackle, at wide receiver, even at corner. There is strength in the class at running back, at tight end. Those are kind of the top groups overall, but those aren't always those premium position areas. Running back, probably only one is taken by 21, maybe 2, but I think it'll just be Ashton Genty. Tight end, we don't know exactly where teams will fall medically on Warren and Lovestand with their injuries. Warren has not worked out in this process either, so I just think it creates a lot more gray this year compared to other years.
Okay, agreed. With Caldwell coming in the other day, I pulled back up some Oregon tape, and in doing so, that obviously gave me a chance to watch not only him but Derek Harmon as well. My thoughts on Caldwell is this is a guy that's primarily in the middle of the line, nose tackle. He's good against a run. He's hard to move in the middle of defensive linemen. I don't think he gives you a lot as a pass rusher overall. I kind of wonder how far out you can kick this guy from the A and B gap. Overall, he does feel like, I don't know, late third, fourth, maybe even early fifth round because of the depth in this class. I can understand the Steelers' interest in him, especially if they're looking for more base nose tackle kind of guy. And look, his strength to me is against the run, just plugging up the middle. He stands up a lot. I think coming out of a stance, he's not the quickest off the line, but he is a guy that's somewhat of an immovable force, if you will, predominantly against the run. doesn't offer you much from a pass rushing standpoint from what I saw on tape. So he is a guy that I think if the Steelers had interest in, predominantly as a run stopper, predominantly in the middle of the line, that this could be a guy from, I suppose, third round to fifth round.
Yeah, that's a fair evaluation. He really is your true older school nose tackle. I would want to check out, and I haven't yet, his 2023 tape. He was a Houston transfer to Oregon for the Ducks, the way that Harmon transferred in from Michigan State. Had 6.5 sacks in 2023 for the Cougars. And so, what does that look like? What were the quality of those sacks? 0 sacks last year for Oregon. Was the scheme different? Was the level of competition an issue? Were there missed opportunities? I'm not sure. Obviously, Caldwell's not going to be anyone's impression of a top tier pass rusher, but I would want to check out a reel of those 23 sacks just to see what those look like to get an idea, maybe some better pass rush chops from Jamari Caldwell.
Okay. I have not watched 2023 on him yet from the Houston.
You had said about kind of being able to adjacently watch Derek Harmon. Did you have any additional impressions on Harmon?
I just kind of wonder how slam dunk of a first round prospect he is.
What do you see as potential deficiencies that might not get into that top 32 group?
Just inconsistencies, I think, from snap to snap overall. I think he is a adequate run stopper. I think he's an adequate pass rusher. Just on a down-to-down basis, does he pop as someone that would come off the board at 21 overall?
Yeah, I get that. I thought one of the biggest issues on tape for me was a lack of finish. He missed too many tackles, too many sacks. There were some plays that he certainly left out on the field. And is he this, dominant athlete with great change of direction? Is maybe a little more linear and straight line? Maybe the power can be better too. And so I don't think I don't think he's a finished product though, because he really didn't break out until this past year at Oregon. He had a pretty quiet career at Michigan State. I think he got his body a bit better in 2024 as well. Maybe dropped some weight, and so maybe that's an element as well. So, I think you can at least say that he's not a finished product, which maybe makes you feel more optimistic about working on some things, as opposed to if he was this 4-year starter with a ton of experience and ton of production, but the tape you don't love. Now, obviously, you're projecting when you're talking about a guy that isn't finished and has some things to work on. You kind of wonder, okay, will that happen or not? But I do look at Harmon a little more like you can work on some things with him, clean up technique, maybe pad level a little bit, and make him a better player because of it.
Do you feel Walter Nolan is a more finished product than Derek Harmon?
I think Nolan's a little more, well, I think both are pretty scheme obvious to me, where I think Harmon really fits well in a Pittsburgh 3-4 type of system. I think Nolan really fits well in a 4-3 one gapping system. And I know that, lines blur between 3-4 and 4-3 and sub packages and, roles aren't as clearly defined as they were 10, 20 years ago. But I just really view them as kind of two different players. I think maybe Nolan is a little more clear in terms of who he is, but I think they're both pretty obvious in terms of where they're schematically going to fit best, if that makes sense.
Where does Kenneth Grant fit in relation to those two?
I think Grant probably is a little more Harmon in terms of some things to work on, in terms of being a little more down to down consistent to some of the things that you spoke about. So that's probably a little more analogous to compare those two. But obviously Grant is heavier, viewed more nose tackle than defensive end, and so there's a little difference in terms of their scheme fit.
All right, I think where I sit right now, I would rank these guys Grant, Nolan, then Harmon. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think you can rank him anyway, for sure. But I mean, it's also about scheme fit too, because does Nolan fit Pittsburgh's system as an undersized, shorter in height and length defensive end? And so there's an evaluation of the talent, but then there's an evaluation of how does he fit in your system? Because we've seen a lot of guys that are talented just not fit in the right system. Ziggy Hood's a good example of that. A guy that Pittsburgh, was a 4-3 D tackle. They tried to make him a 3-4 end. He was talented, but just wasn't a good fit for what Pittsburgh wanted.
And I think Nolan was one of the first guys I talked about early in the draft process here. And kind of my main takeaway with him was, man, this is a guy that can because of his skill set, you could really see him as a defensive tackle in a 4-3 more than anything else. And man, a team like Cincinnati, I mean, go through the list of teams that use that, four down, front quite a bit. It does seem like he is a. Yeah, I mean, you could fit him in the Steelers system, but how far out can you kick him?
Yeah.
And would he predominantly need to be a nose tackle in a base for the Steelers?
Well, he'd be more of a three tech. I don't think he'd play in a lot of like true nose tackle, absorbing double teams. It's probably not good for him and for the Steelers defense. I mean, I don't want to ignore talent. If you have a talented player, you can make
Right.
that guy fit. A lot of systems Pittsburgh's scheme has evolved, a lot of sub package, a record rate last year, according to our tracking. I just viewed him as a Milton Williams type, where he's the best in that ecosystem where it's all upfield, it's all go, 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 penetrate, disrupt. And I just don't think that's exactly what Pittsburgh needs with their defensive lineman, especially for a team that got run all over at the end
Right.
of last year. And as Nolan really provide that solution, you can penetrate in one gap and stop the run, disrupt. That's certainly run defense value, but is that the primary thing you're getting from Nolan? I don't think so, and it just doesn't fit with what Pittsburgh historically has drafted.
All right. Back to Derek Harmon. How overdrafted will he be perceived if the Steelers were to take him at 21?
I don't think at all. I think it'll be right in line with what projections are. I think we talked about Harmon a lot early on, and I think in the early days of the draft process in January, early February, there was some questions. Is that too early for him? But I've seen Mel Kiper Jr. put Harmon to Pittsburgh. I've seen Lance Zierlein put Harmon to Pittsburgh in a recent mock. And so I think 21 may be kind of the start of when Harmon wonders when that phone is going to ring. I don't know how much earlier he could go, potentially a couple of slots early, maybe the Bengals. I've heard about some interest there, but I think 21 is not going to feel like an overdraft.
When you look at Harmon specifically based on the exercise that we just did, would it be how many better players on the board could there potentially be grade wise that the Steelers bypass to take a guy like Harmon, I guess?
I mean, that's a big question. That's
Yeah.
really, really hard to answer. He may not be the highest graded guy, I would probably guess, but how many, in what positions they are, and do they fit the scheme, and do they have injury and character and all that kind of other stuff that comes with deciding a draft pick, that's really, really hard to say.
All right. Joshua Farmer is posting on IG that he is at the Steelers facility today.
Okay, so again, he had talked about that. He's got a bunch of visits throughout the rest of the month here. We talked about that post-pro day, so that's not new. It's another mid-round defensive lineman that's coming in. And let's go through the list, Dave, of the defensive linemen that have come in or are coming in for a visit. And I'm seeing a pretty clear trend in terms of where they're projected to go. And I'm going to pull it up here in just 1 second. And mentioned before, Farmer is not a new name to the list, but since that is official today, it's been J.J. Pegues from Ole Miss, Yahya Black from Iowa, Farmer from Florida State, Elijah Roberts reportedly from SMU, and Jamari Caldwell from Oregon. Those are all third to fifth round plus kind of a guy. Does that signal the D-line may be on the back burner because this team wants either a potent playmaking receiver or they're going to be in pursuit of a quarterback? If this trend continues, there'll be a stronger case that D-line is not going to be the immediate position addressed that we thought it could be and frankly think it should be.
Well, we have seen this team look at positions that we know that they're going to draft and, have kind of fallback options. So we're going to have to obviously wait until the rest of the pre-draft visitors roll through, but it would be quite telling if you don't have a guy like Harmon come in, if you don't have a guy like Kenneth Grant come in, and if you don't have a guy like Walter Nolan come in.
Right. Should we talk about, even in first round consideration with defensive linemen, guys like Tyleek Williams and Alfred Collins Moore? Have we overlooked those guys? I know some view them as day two candidates, and they certainly could be, but those are the defensive linemen you could probably say are the highest on boards that Pittsburgh can be more connected to because they were at the Texas and Ohio State pro days.
I think it is possible that maybe we haven't given enough credence, especially maybe to a guy like Alfred Collins per se. I tell you, a guy that I really like reading and watching all of his work is Matt Bowen on ESPN. Obviously, former NFL player, does a lot of great work on what's the show with a
NFL
great
matchup, I think.
NFL matchup and all like that. And he writes a lot of great stuff throughout the year on ESPN. This morning he kind of released what was the title of the article here? Top prospects at 100 different skills and traits. It's a very good read, and it's a very, for someone like me, it's a very easy read. On top of it, and he goes through different things like best anchor, where he's got Tyler Booker from Alabama, best offensive line quickness, Kevin Banks out of Texas. He just goes through the various positions and different, I guess, descriptions and all like that, and you get down into most physical defensive lineman, Derek Harmon, Oregon. He writes a long and powerful defender with positional flex. Harmon is a physical force who can control blockers, hold the point when playing two-gap technique. He had 5 sacks and 10 tackles for loss last season. Moving forward into this, what caught my eye that plays along with the defensive line that we just talked about. Best pass lane swatter, Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. Alfred Collins, best run stopper. With his long 6'6", 332-pound frame, great play strength, and plenty of awareness, Collins has the makeup of an early down run defender who can win at the point of attack. He had 11 run game stops and 52 tackles on run plays in 2024, and he fits multiple NFL fronts.
I'm sorry, that blurb was on Grant or
no,
or
that's on Collins.
Collins. Yeah, he's a big guy, 330 pounds. So this is more, we're thinking nose tackle, the defensive end, where Benton would kick out and play some base left defensive end in Pittsburgh's 3-4. He's got a foot injury. He was in a boot for his pro day. You wonder about exactly what the status is there. Is that more precautionary? Is that more of a serious thing? But yeah, at that pro day, as a big physical interior, Pittsburgh last week took a Texas defensive lineman in the first round. Worked out pretty well. I'm not scouting the helmet here, just making an obvious comparison and note there with Casey Hampton. So, could he be a guy? I think Tyleik Williams, to talk about him, is a really good run stuffer. Really, really strong. I think one of the best run defenders. I think you could put him, argue that he'd be right up there with Collins on that Bowen list of best run stopper, even better than a Derek Harmon. The question's going to be about pass rush value. How athletic is he? I think there's something there. It's not a complete absence of pass rush value. You just wonder where that ceiling would be. But a Tyleik Williams, if you want that guy that really is here to stop the run first, that's a guy certainly worth considering.
Are Collins and Williams, though, 21 first round worthy?
Yeah, again, the thought has been they're more day 2 guys, but are we putting blinders on and just putting a couple of different people in there and forgetting about Collins and Williams is kind of the point I've just been trying to make.
All right. Yes, I believe it'll be interesting to see if these guys are brought in.
Well, being at their pro day would, I think, require less of the need for those guys to be brought in. That's why I mentioned them, though, because you talk about what guys could you connect them to. What are the highest rated defensive linemen that Pittsburgh has really shown clear interest in, or at least been around. Obviously, with Ohio State and Texas, because there's a bunch of prospects there, but those are the top 2 guys you can draw lines of interest towards.
Okay. I, like you, are a little miffed that we haven't seen more defensive linemen in the door, especially kind of more slam dunk first round guys that we talk about.
Same. Now, maybe there's a bunch in today with Joshua Farmer. Maybe we get off of the podcast in typical terrible podcast fashion, you and I, and 5 minutes later, it's Farmer, it's Harmon, it's Grant. And our discussion on Wednesday completely changes. Those guys are back in play. But I've just said until that happens,
right,
you can't put them on that short list yet.
All right. Agree or disagree? Harmon and Grant need to come in.
Yes.
Okay. And if they don't, we've got some soul searching to do, especially me.
It tells your D-line might not be the play at 21.
All right. Keeping with the theme of the defensive line, this is a momentous day for the site because it begins the Alex Kozora string of series on what the Steelers look for draft studies, and today was on defensive end.
Yeah, good segue. Thank you, Dave. You're carrying the show today for sure. Also, a moment this day, we've officially crossed over 300 scouting reports for our 2025 draft season. And so we're motoring along, still plenty more to come, but excited about hitting the 300 mark. So our annual What Pittsburgh Looks For, looking at draft trends and thresholds to see who best fits for 2025. This is for the defensive ends. Although in my study, I counted all defensive linemen, even ones viewed as nose tackles, to have as wide a net as possible. So looking over the data, and by the way, last year's defensive line selection, Logan Lee, one of 4 players in our 2024 study who checked every single box. And so there is some utility, I like to think, for these studies. This year, 5 prospects. These are combine invites only. That's where I focus the pool on. There may be some other non-combine invites who fit as well, but the 5 who fit are Darius Alexander from Toledo, Zeke Biggers from Georgia Tech, Kenneth Grant from Michigan, Ty Robinson, Nebraska, and Nazir Stackhouse from Georgia. Grant, the highest touted prospect on the list, obviously a likely first rounder. Alexander, Robinson, potential third round candidates. Biggers and Stackhouse I would view as more day 3 types.
Okay, interesting list. And why? Explain why Harmon is not on this list and why Nolan's not on this list.
Yeah, the reason for a lot of these guys that I didn't mention not being here is for lack of testing. You got to be able to you got to participate in everything. And Harmon did not do the shuttles, the jumps, or the bench. Nolan did not do anything besides the 40 and the bench, and so he also didn't do the shuttles and the jumps. And so a lot of guys on here just simply did not participate in a bunch of stuff, and so they don't make the list because they didn't do the dang event.
All right, and had they done these everything, the bench, the vert, the broad, all those 3 cone and all, how confident are you that guys like Nolan and Harmon would have made the list?
Likely the athletic testing for those historically in Pittsburgh have not been super high bars to clear. And so I think Nolan easily would have done it. I think Harmon would have done so too. But it's the reason why I wish more guys did test. I'm even considering their pro day, which I didn't used to do, but with so many guys not doing much of the combine, I've had to rely on pro day data, even though that's not always quite as reliable on some of the timed events, the shuttles and the 40. But unfortunately, with a lot of guys not testing, it just simply takes them off the list by default.
Okay, and back to Nolan real quick. The Steelers had who was at the Ole Miss Pro Day? We know Khan and Tomlin were not.
It was Ike Taylor, Zach Azzani, and Andy Weidel. Assistant GM Andy Weidel was the big name.
Okay, how much clout does Weidel have within that? Obviously, it would be a little. I guess, you look back to last year and follow Tano in the distance away, and can you explain it away that way? I guess, and Dunbar could have easily been at Oregon or Ole Miss, but we never spotted him there. How concerning is that when it comes to Nolan specifically, that neither Khan or Tomlin were at the pro day, and as far as we can tell, neither was Carl Dunbar.
Well, I would just say he doesn't check the box. The Weidel doesn't get you there. It's got to be decision makers, and Weidel is not a decision maker. He may be very helpful in putting together the board and big part of the scouting process, but he's not a decision maker. And so Nolan's going to have to come in for a visit to check that box.
All right. So based on this, the name to watch obviously would be Kenneth Grant
in round 1. But if Pittsburgh does pass on defensive line, which currently is the trend, then you look at Alexander, who's not gotten talked about as much after a really good Senior Bowl week where he was the guy getting all the buzz. And even your guy, you mentioned Ty Robinson very early on in the process, Dave, and that's a guy that may go higher than people think in that third, fourth round range.
Right. I still don't, obviously, neither one of us think that's first round or second round, and the Steelers obviously don't have a second round pick right now, but anytime after that, if the Steelers have not addressed the position, or even if they have, I suppose if they were to double dip. How do you feel about, I talked to Josh and Ross about this, and, you look at their mock drafts and you look at, a couple of, you look at kind of the narrative that not narrative, but maybe a want that we had, at least me going into this. It would not hurt my feelings to see the Steelers double dip on defensive line in this draft. What is the realistic likelihood of that, though, now with us less than 3 weeks away from the draft?
Yeah, obviously, my stance is I think double dipping happens based on a lot of value on the board in day 3, and what happens day 3 can really be unpredictable in terms of who's going to be there. But with only 6 picks, this team adding a lot of depth already in free agency with guys like Aquale bringing back Loudermilk. I would say double dipping defensive line, barring trade downs and acquiring more capital, would be less likely to occur.
All right. I would agree. Let's roll back to the visitors once again from over the weekend there, and Matthew Golden coming in, and you have really been pushing the narrative that you really got to look at wide receiver in the first 2 days of this draft for the Steelers, and that's right now that's 2 rounds, first and third round. You would think you look at this wide receiver class, and we've talked about quite a few of the prospects recently and all. The Matthew Golden coming in really opened my eyes a little bit, thinking, A, could Matthew Golden be on the board there at 21? And B, if he is, would the Steelers go that route? And I have been, I think, more on the line of Alex. I would be really surprised if the Steelers went wide receiver in the first round. And I'm going to have to start pushing back from that a little bit now. You make a really, really great point about where all Azani has been, although I've tried to put that in a box of, well, look at the guys they were looking at with Wells and Thornton out of Tennessee. And then obviously the other place was the Big 12, where a lot of wide receivers in this class, predominantly Knoll and Higgins, are 2 guys that you could perceivably be in the first round guys at the wide receiver position. So I'm going to have to back off a little bit now on my thoughts of, well, unequivocally, there's no way that the Steelers would, take a wide receiver, I think, in the first round. I think I think you've been on more on the right path than this.
Yeah, honestly, I've had more of the thought of third round than first round, but Golden coming in certainly puts him in play. A lot of interest, a lot of dots to connect there. I think he does give a different flavor of what Pittsburgh is looking for while still maintaining the offseason umbrella of explosiveness, playmaking, dynamic ability. I think Golden fits that and saw that really clearly down the stretch in that great playoff run that he had. But he's a route runner, a smaller guy, but somebody who gets open, and it kind of plays well off of the skill set of a George Pickens, of a DK Metcalf, and so that's probably what's attractive there. But yeah, you just look at the list of names so far: Jalen Knoll, Savion Williams, Jaden Higgins, Matthew Golden. Those guys are the ones, receivers who have come in for a visit so far. It would trend a little more towards day 2 than day 1, but if Golden was to be there, and if D-line's not going to be the list, and if it's not going to be quarterback, then kind of leaves you with a guy like Matthew Golden to kick around.
In your heart of hearts, and we had the conversation about rolling through unequivocally and all, what do you think about the chances of Golden, overall chances of being on the board at 21?
I can't make heads and tails with the receiver class. I think the receiver class is bad this year. It really is an uninspiring class. And maybe we've just been spoiled when last year's class was just so Rolls Royce loaded of Neighbors and Harrison Jr. and Brian Thomas even, and other names I'm probably forgetting right now. It was a really good class last year. None of those guys in this year's class would go above. Not even Tedero McMillan would go ahead of the names I just rattled off. So I'm in my heart of hearts, to use your phrase, I'm still a little less convinced they're going to take receiver in round 1. This just seems like the wrong year to do it. But I do think round 3, or if they were to trade down in round 1, get additional capital, that's where receivers more likely to come into play. But to answer your question on Golden, I really just don't know. I assume a receiver will be gone by 21. Will it be him? Will it be McMillan? I think it's going to be a really good debate. One of the big questions to watch. Who is that first receiver off the board and where he's going to go? I'm not sure anyone has an answer right now.
And what do you view Travis Hunter as entering the
Yeah,
NFL?
I mean, that's kind of the right. He's whatever you want him to be. And he's receiver, corner. I think the reporting is the teams are going to be viewing him a little more corner than receiver, but he's gone by he's easily top 5, maybe even number 2 overall to Cleveland. And so just I'm putting him aside kind of in all these receiver discussions because he's not going to really impact Golden and McMillan's
All
status.
right. Outside of Hunter, how many wide receivers come off the board before 21? 2?
1 or 2, I would think.
At least 1, right?
I don't want to even say at least 1 because it's not a good receiver class, and if it's just not a good class, then don't force it. I mean, you would think that some receiver will go by then. I think 1 will go, but I don't want to guarantee that when it's not a good class.
Okay. All right. You want to talk about a couple other wide receivers you watched?
Yeah, I did some more homework this weekend on my road to recovery, and Noel was one guy I watched late last night. Different type of guy compared to his teammate at Iowa State, Jaden Higgins, and some of the size Pittsburgh has on the roster now. He's more looking like Calvin Austin than Pickens or Metcalf. Noel's a guy that had a breakout season. You see the speed, you see the acceleration, the burst. I think he does a great job breaking away vertically on posts, on crossers, the rocker step that he has to gain separation. My thing with Noel was I thought he invited too much contact on underneath routes for how undersized he is. He got beat up too much. And I didn't see necessarily the great underneath the route running. I thought he was a really good and precise route runner at speed. He can carry that through his route, but more vertically on those posts, on those deep crossers. I didn't see him win underneath as often as I would have liked, and that was a little concerning to me for a guy that is undersized.
He is a little bit of an outlier when you talk about some of these top wide receivers or perceived ones that would go in per se the first round, if you will. Specifically, I guess in the first 21 picks, 73% of his college production came out of the slot. I'm sure you saw that. Only 24% out wide. His average depth of target when compared to kind of these guys that many think could or should go ahead of him was just 8.3, and that's some of the lowest. I mean that's the lowest of I mean that's even lower than a guy like Luther Burden, who they're to talk about how how he was used. Mecca Ibuka, another slot heavy guy coming out of college, his career production 73% matches Jalen Nolan. So it is what he. In other words, as he enters the NFL, is he going to be more slot specific?
I mean, I'm sure just based on profile alone. I mean, he did play, some on the outside. I don't want to typecast him just as an interior guy. And in Pittsburgh, you sit there and see you got Pickens and Metcalf on the outside. Okay, get an interior guy in Noel. And apparently, I looked it up because I keep saying it wrong. It is
Yeah,
Noel. He even
it is.
tweeted about it.
Yeah,
It is Noel. And so I want to make
I've
sure I
called him
say that.
Noel a few times throughout this process myself.
Yeah, no, it's all good. You just wonder in an Arthur Smith offense, I'll repeat it, 12 personnel, two receivers set base. What is the snap count? What is the viability of getting him a lot of snaps? But even putting that all aside, just looking at the tape, I was hoping to see a better, more nuanced route runner underneath, and I didn't quite see that in the tape that I watched.
All right. How surprised would you be if Noel or Egbuka was the Steelers' pick at 21?
Then, well, Ibuka would not be surprising. Noel to me would be very surprising at
Okay.
21. That feels far too early for him.
All right. Where are you on the Luther Burden train right now?
I dove into him really good this weekend as well, and I really like him as a talent. but I think schematically in Pittsburgh, the Steelers' offense is not the offense for Luther Burden to thrive in. I think Pittsburgh is an offense that needs to walk before they run, and they probably would not properly utilize and scheme up opportunities for someone like a Luther Burden. I think he really fits well in a 49ers type of offense. My comp to him was DJ Moore in Chicago as a guy that is stickly built, explosive, can break tackles, but needs a little bit more of kind of the scheme for him. And I think in an offense that in general has struggled to scheme up their playmakers, and Burden came in as really like fourth or fifth fiddle behind the run game, behind Pickens and Metcalf and Freiermuth. I just don't see this being the offense for him.
I agree. Who else did you watch that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, your guy. I don't want to say your guy, but the guy you've talked about, Antoine Wells Jr. from Ole Miss. I watched both of the top Ole Miss receivers, Trey Harris and Antoine Wells Jr. With Wells Jr., you see the acceleration, the open field speed, post catch ability, just light production. 28 catches this past year. It was pretty quiet. Did not have a 100-yard receiving game this year. Only had one game with more than 5 receptions. I think you really have to kind of bank on that 2022 tape in South Carolina, where he had bigger numbers, 68 receptions, and kind of a fuller season there. But you're talking late day 3. If it came down to, because the discussion was a lot about Dante Thornton from Tennessee and Antoine Wells Jr., I would take Thornton over Wells.
Okay. My gist of kind of that conversation that we came out the other day, excuse me, might be, are Wells and Thornton kind of might wind up being the best value in this wide receiver class, where it comes to draft capital versus upside.
I don't want to say best value. I think there's projections there with both. I think you're kind of banking on what they could be as opposed to what they were in college. And Thornton's just got so far to go. He really is that true. He's like the true outcome hitter in baseball. It's like strikeout or home run kind of a guy. That's really Thornton. He's that big play, feast famine, not a lot of in between with him. I think Wells is a little more refined, a little more advanced, going off that 2022 season in which he was, playing a more every down role, had a larger target share. And so I think it's a little more work to do with Thornton than Wells, but I do think Thornton is so freaky to have that kind of height, weight, the acceleration, the second gear he shows mid-route is really, really impressive, and that can really offer an element. He will draw, and has drawn, some Martavis Bryant vibes. My comp to him was Valdez Scantling, who's kind of just been a pure vertical throughout his career. But the freakiness of Thornton is going to definitely bring and invite some of those Martavis Bryant vibes, with a big profile guy that has just crazy acceleration for a guy that frame.
He's got great stutter and go.
Yeah, he was really good on double moves, really good vertically. I mean, he was just, a true take the top off a defense type of receiver.
Is Antoine Wells Jr. the better route runner than his counterpart over there, Trey Harris?
It's really interesting with Harris, because it's a guy because what happens is when I do these reports, I'm focused on the reports that I publish. I've done over 60 of them, but I don't always get to, if I'm not writing the report on the guy, I may not be watching him intently because I'm just focused on the guys I'm writing the reports on. Somebody else takes a Trey Harris. I'm not going to sit there too early and focus on him. So I really wanted to watch Harris this weekend. I thought what was most impressive about Harris was he was a good route runner. He has good nods. He has good nuance in his routes. He's got good ability to shake guys top of the route. The concern with Harris to me was lack of athleticism, lack of burst, lack of speed. I thought there was that. Well, you're right. He's not super twitchy, but I thought as a route runner he was good. Like, my view of Trey Harris is that his best fit, even though he was almost exclusively an outside guy at Ole Miss, and the route tree was not super complicated in that Lane Kiffin system, like, I think he could become almost what Juju Smith-Schuster is today, a big slot receiver, where he's more, good hands over the middle, can get open, can box guys out, be that big slot. Like, my comp to him is a Juju, maybe a Cedric Tillman type of a guy. On the high end, you're looking at a Chris Godwin type of that true elite big slot receiver. But I thought Harris, his nuance, ability to drop his hips, get in and out of breaks was more impressive. I didn't think he really has the chops to be athletically dynamic on the outside. I think a move to the inside is going to be his kind of best best path to NFL success
All right.
for the next level.
So more of a big slot. He's good after the catch, though. A physical guy.
Yeah, which fits on that slot receiver in terms of running those routes over the middle and doing some of that dirty work. So, I mean, I it was interesting with him. I didn't expect to kind of have that evaluation of him as a big guy that I thought had good hips, but is lacking that top end speed and real open field ability.
Didn't we also talk about Trey Harris, though, and his production against quality of competition?
Yeah, I think you mentioned a lot of it came against some lesser competition. I think some of the Georgia Southerns of the world is kind of where he made his hay.
All right, let's end the wide receiver talk after you watch more now. At 21 specifically, when it comes to really reasonable selections for the Steelers at 21 overall at the wide receiver position, you obviously, I think, got to put Matthew Golden on that list, right?
Sure.
Who else would you put on that list? Higgins?
Is he viewed as a first round guy? I want to get your take on Higgins too. I watched both the Iowa State guys. Where do you come in on Jaden Higgins?
I don't think he's a top 3 wide receiver. I don't think overall. I look. I have said that I'm Alec I am Menor out of Stanford. I wonder if he might not be the second best wide receiver, top to bottom in this class. I think it might go Tet. Not talking about Travis Hunter, of course.
Sure.
I think in whatever order it probably goes Tet, uh, Alec, Golden, and Higgins. And I think to me that's where my list starts and ends as far as
What
Steelers.
what did you like most about Higgins, and where did you think he has to work on, if anything in particular that stuck out?
Trying to remember back. He is a guy that can stretch the field, mostly was wide outside, not a lot of slot production coming out of college. Reasonable yards after the catch ability, but not great when compared to others in this class. He just seems like more of a guy that you take shots down the field with. He can function in the intermediate area, but route running, okay. I think there's something to build on there. Just more of an outside guy, a guy that can stretch the field for you.
Did he feel like a first round talent to you?
Yeah, I probably not top 15 picks, obviously, but this is not a great wide receiver class overall. But I think if you're in a situation, look, is he a slam dunk number one carry an offense type guy? I don't think so. So I think he might his ceiling is top wide receiver 2.
Is that a guy worth taking in the first round then? I think is
Probably.
the question. It's hard for me to justify that because if I'm
Yeah.
taking, like I said last time on Wednesday's show, for a first round receiver, it's going to be a number one. I'm going to run my offense through this guy. If you're not that, I'm not taking you.
I think you get lost in the fact of where he ranks in this class versus where he ranks in other classes and worthiness of first round
Yeah.
pick based on the class in and of itself. In any other class, would we be talking about him as a first round pick? Probably not.
Where is he? Where is he showing up in most mocks right now? Because I didn't get the sense he was being put in a lot of first round mocks, but I might be wrong. And like I said, this receiver class is so jumbled up, and just because he's not put in a lot of first round mocks doesn't really mean a whole lot. Looks like more the consensus is round 2. It
Okay.
seems on him.
All right.
I just thought he's a big guy. He tracks the ball really well. As you said, there is some burst explosives. I thought on slants over the middle. I thought he was able to show some burst to get away from DBs. I just thought he didn't always play quite as big as his frame suggests, and I just thought he got beat up mid route more than he should be. A guy that was a little too dominated physically down the line, and then I think obviously athletically, I think he's just okay after the catch, and so I didn't come away loving either Iowa State guy.
All right, so let's roll it back. Is Tet and Matthew Golden the two that most likely for the Steelers to take at 21 if either were be on the board? Would you even consider Egbuka there?
Well, yeah, that was going to be what I was going to say. I think Ibuka has to be at least put in that camp as potential options for how he fits Pittsburgh, his skill set as that slot guy, that selfless player, really smooth, consistent. You feel pretty confident with him in projecting him to the next level. So I think he's on that list if you're going to make a list of first round possibilities. I know that Tedero McMillan is viewed as that top receiver and has been throughout this process, but if there's a guy that might slip a bit, it might be him. Where Golden could be that first receiver. And I just pulled up where McMillan is being viewed in some mock drafts. There are some where he's kind of in spitting distance for Pittsburgh. I was just looking at some at random here. Number 19 to Tampa Bay, number 20 to Denver. Lance Zierlein in his last mock had McMillan going 18th, I think, to Seattle. I mean, that's right on the doorstep of Pittsburgh. Could that be a guy that slips a bit and is on the board at 21 to Pittsburgh, and a guy that we did not talk about at all the first couple months of this process because we just thought he was like top 5, top 10 kind of a guy? Could McMillan be in play at 21?
Well, he would need to come in for a visit, right?
That's fair. That's a fair point there. But just in terms of like, would he even be available? Because a month ago would have been like, this guy's not going to be available at 21. It's not even worth having that conversation. Now I think it's a possibility.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody besides McMillan, Egbuka, Matthew Golden that you'd view 21 worthy?
At receiver,
Right.
let me double check the list here so I'm making sure I'm not overlooking anyone.
I mean, Trey Harris, you're not going to put him there, right?
No, I mean, I think Burden is worthy of it at 21 in terms of talent. I just don't think Pittsburgh's the right fit for him.
What about Alec out of Stanford?
Manor. No, I wouldn't. That's one guy I didn't get a chance to really go in depth with. I'm just worried about the history of those injuries, man. There's
Okay.
a lot of knee injuries for a big guy that has me medically concerned on the limited information we have about him there.
All right. I guess the short question here is, does it seem like it's realistically Matthew Golden or bust if the Steelers were to take a wide receiver at 21?
I mean, based on the Blues Clues currently, yes, because he's the guy that came in for a visit, and they were not at Missouri's pro day for Burden. They weren't at, well, okay, again, Ibuka is on the list too. So I think it's Golden, Ibuka when it comes to receiver as things stand today.
All right. I would agree.
All right, Dave, anything else to talk about? Maybe say, I watched running backs, but maybe save that for next show in case things are still slow by then. Do you have any flavor running back, anyone that you really would pound the table for besides Genty?
I think just from what the Steelers look for, be interesting when we get to this Travion out of Ohio State.
Henderson, yeah, you talk about the explosiveness, the home run ability for him. What I think fit the theme of what Pittsburgh is trying to accomplish this offseason.
I think going back to what Matt Bowen just wrote in his article, I think he's also a guy that had the least fumbles, did he not? We know Mike Tomlin loves ball security. Best ball security as a ball carrier, Trevion Henderson. Over his past 2 seasons, Henderson had 346 offensive touches at Ohio State and didn't fumble. He's a reliable player in the run and pass game. Also, Matt Bowen has him as the best pass protecting back.
Yeah, you watch that Penn State tape. There are some really A-plus reps. I thought there were some other issues in other games, but he'll get typecast as not a great pass protector because of the lack of size or like ideal size, but he is a pretty stout pass protector. The ball security is good. The big playability is good. My big concern with him was the injury history. I'm trying to read off what it was there in 2022. He missed 5 games with a broken bone in his foot, torn ligament. In 2023, he missed 3 games with an undisclosed injury. Was he injured anywhere else despite earlier in his career? Trying to see, I'm not seeing anything top of mind right now, but there's an injury history on a smaller frame kind of a guy, and you do kind of worry about him holding up at the NFL level.
All right. Yeah, let's table to give you a little bit of break, make this a little bit of a shorter show. We'll talk more about the running back class in during the Wednesday show. One other kind of superlative, I guess, if you will, from Matt Bowen on his article on ESPN. Fastest pass catcher, Matthew Golden. Obviously ran a 4.29 in the 40-yard dash. He had him listed there. Most explosive pass catcher, according to Matt Bowen, Dante Thornton Jr. out of Tennessee, a vertical blazer with 4.3 speed. Thornton averaged 25.4 yards per catch last season for the Vols, tops in the nation. He's a third-level target who can create conflict for opposing defenses. Let's end it this way. If the Steelers don't take a wide receiver per your kind of push that they will take one in the first 2 days based on historical and position coach and all like that. How do you like the chances of Wells or Dante Thornton being a post round 3 selection for the Steelers at wide receiver?
Yeah, I like the odds. I think Thornton in the 4th round especially would really kind of fit. That feels like something that you could easily see happen. And I still see him in the 5th and 6th round of a bunch of mock drafts, and the production is light, obviously, but you just see the upside in a pretty weak class. I think a team will be tempted to take him before he goes off the board. So if it's not a receiver in the top 2 days, I think Thornton in the 4th round has a good chance to happen.
All right, I would agree. All right, that was a good talk today. Shall we get to some reader emails then?
Yeah, let's do that and close out today's show.
All right, do we have any more visitors coming in today? How you feeling? All right.
I'll live, I think. I'm not seeing any visitors yet, but I'm sure they're waiting for us to wrap up the podcast to announce the other names coming in.
Yep. Let's see. Brett Nile back in here says, "Hey, David Alex had a question about the 50% rule as it applies to Mike Williams' contract. Did the Steelers pay that bonus, and can you take on proration of money you did not pay? If the Jets paid that money and the Steelers are liable for it on the cap, isn't that essentially trading salary cap space? And isn't that circumventing the salary cap?" He said, "I could see if there was guaranteed money still on the contract or if these were performance bonuses that he made because the Steelers are still paying the money. But on its face, this looks like taking the salary cap hit for the Jets. What am I missing?" Brett, I know less about the 50% rule still as I do more. There was a blurb in that I posted in that post the other day from Jason Fitzgerald from Over the Cap in his Crunching the Numbers book. There's just a small segment in the actual CBA when it comes to that particular rule, which I believe was Article 13, blah 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 B. I can't remember. I can't rattle that off my head right away. I think the key here was the void years, along with the money considered other other something considered as signing bonus. And there's a lot about that rule that I still don't understand. Now, is it circumventing of salary cap space? No, not. Look, it wouldn't be listed in the teams aren't going to be able to circumvent the salary cap. It is a unique rule, and to my understanding too, it included the per game roster bonus amounts that were not likely to be earned, that had he stayed on the Jets roster all season and had he not played all the games that he could have stood to earn, that were not likely to be earned, that the Jets would have got a credit for any games that he did not dress and play for. To my understanding is the Steelers would have been in the same situation because of the way the contract was set up, that had he missed any games after being traded to the Steelers would have received a credit per se on that. You're asking me questions though that about a rule that I have still not been able to wrap my entire head around. So it's legal because it's been done. You don't see a lot of teams that use this 50% rule. I've talked to other guys that cap guys, Texans cap guy, a couple of other ones that say this is not a lot of teams utilize these type of contracts. I think he mentioned the Buccaneers are as a team that utilizes this more so than others. The Jets obviously used it on Mike Williams. Who else was there? I believe that Tyron, who's the edge rusher for the Buccaneers? Wasn't he with the Browns this past year?
Yeah.
What was his name?
Washington kid.
Yeah.
Joe Tryon
Yeah,
Schwenka.
I believe the contract he just signed this offseason with the Browns is subject to that as well. They call it a 50% down rule. Here's the only thing that I know about it. Joel Corey said it's a seldom used rule. He did not go into specifics of how the rule works. But he says it's a seldom used rule that Mike Williams was indeed subject to that. And then that's why the dead money was associated with it. Long story short, I believe that the Steelers did pay out $2.5 million to Mike Williams in cash. It's just how it was distributed in years versus the cap that became the big surprise, and why the Steelers were left with $1.516 million in dead money related to it. I wish I had more to offer on it, being a salary cap guy, but I'm still trying myself to wrap my head more around the rule.
Well, I think you provided as much explanation as anybody on the internet could do about the situation, and yeah, that is over my head right now, and I'm gonna just defer to you on handling all of that. But a weird, quirky situation, and just kind of a little twist of the knife on the way out the door for Mike Williams.
Yeah. Now look, they had a lower salary cap charge in 2024 than what was originally thought because of it. So you're paying for it basically on the back end.
Yeah, that's true. So either way, though, the good news is Pittsburgh's in a good place cap wise, and so it's not going to really squeeze them much as it might have in other years.
All right. My computer's trying to lock up on me here. Let me see if I can get to another one here from Scott writes in, Dave and Alex, question for the pod. Ingredients for the Steelers Depot hot dog. Mike Tomlin famously said back in September regarding the petty game ball given to Russell Wilson after the Steelers beat the Broncos that I can't give you all the ingredients to the hot dog. You might not like it. He says, I was wondering if you could give us a peek behind the curtain of Steelers Depot regarding how you operate when it comes time to write and post an article. You have so many great writers on staff, so when a news story comes up, like if an insider reports something or a player says something on a podcast, how do you decide who's going to write the article? I imagine there's a lot of time spent on coordination and management among the team to make sure there's no duplication of work and everyone is on the same page. Hope you don't mind giving up some of the key ingredients to the Steelers Depot hot dog. Okay. It's not as exciting of a hot dog than most might think. Look, we have a schedule set up where certain guys are on certain shifts. We obviously have several guys on staff that are full-time guys, and we set out a schedule according to that. We also have our own kind of a private Discord channel. We have a lot of communication that goes on within that. People holler out, who's going to take what, if a breaking news story comes up, or if there's some sort of aggregation, or if there's some sort of original content. We're just in full communication all throughout the day of who is getting what, who's working what shift, and it just kind of flows from there. So there's not anything magical as far as a hot dog, just a lot of communication, who's working the shift that day, who hollers out who's going to get what.
Yeah, I mean, that's the summation of it. That's kind of a dibs-based thing. Whoever's on and whoever says, I'm getting this and sees it, gets it, is kind of the way we roll around here.
We got a lot of great feedback on, not going to get into it. We asked people to rank position value by need by the numerical value. So appreciate a lot of people getting back to us on that. Let's take one more here from Marshall Clapper. He says, appreciate all the content, insight you guys provide. It's the best Steelers coverage out there. It feels like the backup swing tackle is going to be a veteran since they've shown little interest in any prospects except for Milroe from WVU. Who are some of the free agents that you guys have your eye on? He says, one name that made sense to me is Joe Noteboom. What are your thoughts on him? Look, there's when you get to the list of available free agents that could be swing tackle at this point, the list is not very deep at all. Is it, Alex?
Yeah, it's not that great out there. No Boom's a name I've mentioned a time or two before. Joe Fant is another one. So yeah, getting a veteran guy with left and right tackle experience would be ideal. And so it's slim pickings, but if you can do that, then that works. And No Boom is one of those guys that fits.
Yeah, and because a couple of these guys might or are unrestricted free agents, might we see the Monday after the draft where the compensatory value goes away? Might that be when we see maybe a guy or one of these guys like, I don't know, Jedrick Wills or Joe Noteboom? Who else did you mention?
George Fant was the other one I mentioned.
Fant. Now Fant's a street free agent right now, so he would not be subject to the.
Was he cut?
I believe so. Over the Cap has him as a street free agent right now.
Yeah, he was released March 4th, so he could be signed without impacting the comp formula.
So could we see one of these guys like Noteboom? In other words, could we see that veteran guy who's an unrestricted guy that might be more than a minimum guy get signed immediately? Hey, LaRaven Clark's still out there.
Hey, no, no, you're joking. Yeah, we certainly could. It would make sense. I hope so, Dave. There's nothing to tackle, and you could go even if you drafted a rookie. It's rookies on rookies. It's youth upon youth, and I have to imagine they're going to add a veteran at some point, but they haven't yet. And it's to me, it's a big outstanding need on this team, even though it's not as noticeable as say D-line or quarterback, but it's something they're missing and they have to have.
So his throw out there about Noteboom could indeed be somebody they have on their radar, but potentially after the first Monday after the draft, right?
Yeah, that would make sense. And by the way, seeing a tweet here from Ray Fittipaldo, 2 players on visits today for Pittsburgh, Joshua Farmer and Bashal Tootin. Tootin, the running back from Virginia Tech. That is also, I believe, known by us. Let me double check our tracker. So we may not be getting new news today, just maybe doing some scheduling and housekeeping and getting some of those things officially official. Let me just double check too. Another one of those big play running backs, but he's on the other spectrum of the Henderson ball security. He's got a bunch of fumbles in his career. Tootin does. And so that's the concern with him. We did know that he was going to come in. We've known that for almost a month now, but that is official today.
All right. Where are the rest of our defensive linemen, Alex?
It's like we're both Alan Rickman, Hans Gruber. Where are the detonators? Where are the defensive linemen, Dave? And so we continue to wait.
Matt Bowen, by the way, when it comes to Tootin, fastest rusher. Tootin ran a 4.32 second 40-yard dash at the combine, the fastest time among running backs. He's a rapid accelerator with home run ability. Tootin had 3 touchdown rushes of 50-plus yards last season.
Yeah, big play guy. Speed is there. Concern is just on that ball security side. I don't know if Pittsburgh would love that with Jalen Warren also having some ball security issues, but certainly someone they're looking at. And again, kind of tells me we're mid-round type, 3rd, 4th round. Tootin probably falls into. I think that's where Pittsburgh's going to take that running back.
All right, I think we got, I think I've tortured you enough. I told you this would be about an hour. It's gone a little bit longer. Your trooper sitting in, coming off of surgery for this. So how about we end this show here and come back?
By the way, I should mention no live stream tonight just because just probably not in great enough shape to do it. We're going to hopefully have that next Monday and kind of go from there. So for those, I'll have a post on the YouTube channel, but no live stream tonight.
All right. Get better the rest of the way, and I'll talk to you on Wednesday then, Alex. And in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, follow the directions that way. We have an iOS app that you can download from the Apple Store as well, too, if you want to follow the site that way. So until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.